Welcome to another episode of the Barnes on Bama podcast. I'm your host, Owen Barnes, and we've got some things to discuss. First off, sorry about not having a podcast last week. I have had a lot going on with my girlfriend's surgery and traveling for Thanksgiving, and just a lot of things have been going on, and I just didn't get around to recording last week, so really sorry about that. But have a couple of things I want to break down. I'm going to go through the Illinois game, talk about what I really liked about. We're going to preview the players' era, and I'm going to spend all of 45 seconds on the atrocity that happened on Saturday. And so let's start with the Illinois game. We'll talk about whatever the heck happened on Saturday, and then we'll jump into the players' era tournament because Alabama basketball has a big week ahead of them against some really, really tough teams. So let's get into this. The Illinois game. And when we look at the Illinois game, for those of you that follow me on Twitter or follow me here on the podcast, I thought that the ability of Alabama in this Illinois game was that I thought that Alabama could win this Illinois game because Alabama was more experienced and had played tougher teams. And it really felt like that, right? It felt like early that Alabama was having the success due to their experience, due to their ability of having played a lot of college basketball, having played tougher teams. When Illinois would make a good play or make a good run, Alabama knew exactly how to answer. And so it really felt like Alabama had Illinois right where they wanted them. Grant Nelson, one of the seniors, was the focal point early in this game. Grant Nelson was kind of the MVP. He was the best player that Alabama had for the start of this game. He lights it up from three. He goes 4 of 9. Kind of uncharacteristically good from him from deep. Really did it all, though, right? He was just absolutely dominant in this game. And it was great because Alabama was without, and I say without because he just didn't play his best game, any scoring from Mark Sears. And this is something you're not going to hear us talk about hardly at all. This is only his second scoreless game in his entire college career. And, there were a lot of things talking about, what happened. Was he sick? Was he hurt? There were some comments that apparently Nate Oates tried to put him back in later in the game. And Mark told him, no, leave in the guys that are currently in. That being LeBaron Filan, Aiden Holloway, Latrell Wrightsell. Mark was like, hey, those guys are playing better. Just leave them playing. So that's the reason why Mark ends up playing just 21 minutes in this game. He goes 0 of 4 from 3, 0 of 1 from 2, just 0 of 5 from the field. Doesn't have a great game. Does have a couple of assists, a couple of turnovers, but just overall did not have it. He did have a pretty decent defensive possession where he got a steal, and so you thought that maybe that was going to jumpstart his offense, and it just never seemed to happen. But the impressive part is Alabama still puts up 100 points. And the reason they put up 100 points is because you had still 3 guys actually in the backcourt, all that scored in double digits. And that's Aiden Holloway, Latrell Wrightsell, and LeBaron Filan. All 3 guys really played really good games. LeBaron Filan did not hit any shots from deep, but is consistently going to challenge for double-doubles and triple-doubles this season. I think that the notion that LeBaron Filan is not a one-and-done may be completely gone at this point. Coming into the season, there were a lot of questions about how much is he going to play? Is he going to play defense? Pretty quickly you started hearing stuff out of fall camp and out of spring camp, or, out of summer, I guess. Hey, Filan's really good. We weren't sure if he's going to play defense, but I think he is. And if he is, he's going to be a great player. And at this point, I'm pretty convinced he's going to be a one and done. If you want to see LeBaron Filan in person, you better come to a game this season because he's gone. He just has the it factor. He clearly was a great scorer, and we knew that coming out. He averaged 37 in Mobile. He's an incredible scorer, but what else he does around the ball, the ball just finds him. He ends up with 7 rebounds. He gets 9 assists, 2 steals. He plays off of 2 feet. He finishes at the rim, as good as any guard I've seen in a long time. He's really physical, can be really tough in the paint. And like I said, Filan is exactly what we need out of a guard, especially with Chris Youngblood out. Latrell Wrightsell did, shoot 2 of 4, shot decently well from deep, had 4 assists. Had 4 fouls, which you don't love, but in general, played a pretty good game, especially for Latrell. Not his most elite shooting night ever, but definitely had a very good shooting night. And then the sharpshooter of the group was Aiden Holloway. He goes 3 of 4 from deep. Nate has talked about all offseason that Aiden's one of the best shooters he's coached. He said that about Latrell last season. And it really goes to show that, both of those guys at any moment can go 3 of 4, 5 of 6, 7 of 8, right? Aiden Holloway and Latrell, and even Mark, right? Mark had a bad night, but any of those guys have that ability to shoot the lights out from deep. And so that's something that really, stresses out a defense, especially when you have somebody like Aiden that can flip the switch and get up to speed as quickly as he can. And that's something that's really big. Also, he adds 2 assists to no turnovers, and that's something that he was incredible at Auburn, and I expect that he will continue to be really good at that coming up. So I really do think that that's, kind of the key to this team. Mo D hits another 3. You also get a 3 from Aiden Sherrill. By and large, Alabama actually doesn't shoot the 3 that well in this game. They do make 11, but it was on 34 attempts, so it's really just 32% from deep. So still not the best shooting night, but Alabama played pretty efficient overall. They have just 7 turnovers to 13 from Illinois. They only commit 17 fouls. Nobody fouls out. They get 7 steals. They get 7 offensive rebounds versus 14 for Illinois, and that's a spot that Alabama's going to have to clean up, especially with Houston on deck. It's something that hurt us against Purdue. It did not hurt us against Illinois, but it could have, and it's definitely something that Houston, I'm sure, is going to key in on, and I'm sure that Alabama has practiced and worked on that, but that's the thing I really want to watch in this Houston game coming up, is how Alabama's able to do on the glass, because I don't think you're going to get doubled up on the glass and be super successful all the time, right? I think Illinois was a little bit of an anomaly. When we put up a 1.23 on offense, we're able to withstand the 1.07 that Illinois puts up. So that's what happened in that game. I will say one of the comments off of the last video requested that I talk about what the KenPom stats are after games, just to give kind of a look back point throughout the season. So I'm going to do that really quick. So as it sits right now, Alabama is at 10th in KenPom. This is being recorded on Monday the 25th. So Alabama sits at 10th in KenPom. We're at the 3rd ranked offense, 50th ranked defense. We're 8th in tempo. We're 43rd in effective field goal percentage. We're doing really well in offensive not turning the ball over, 37th in the country. We're 5th in the country at 2-point percentage. That's some of the main stats that we're going to kind of talk about. Those are the ones that I expect to fluctuate. Sitting right now, we're at a 30.8 3-point percentage, which is 247th. I would expect, obviously, that number to go up, but the question is how high up, because that may be partially, the peak of this team. If we can't cross like a 33-34% number, then that may, hold this team back with the number of threes that they take, because under 30% is losing that 1-point efficiency that Nate is kind of gunning for. You really need better than 33% to hit that efficiency number. So that's really something that's going to be you're going to want to watch kind of throughout the season. It's really early. It's only been 5 games, but definitely something we're going to want to watch as we continue on throughout the rest of the season. So that's what I want to say. Like I said, currently we're sitting at 10th with a 3 and 50 from an offensive and defensive perspective, and we will see how that shakes up throughout the rest of the season. So we're going to shift over to the Houston game. So I'm going to prep the Houston game and the Rutgers game, and then we'll talk a little bit about the teams on the other side of the bracket. But if you're not aware for how the Players Era Tournament is going to work, 2 games are set, and that's Alabama's for sure playing Houston on Tuesday night. They are for sure playing Rutgers on Wednesday night. And then on Friday, they will be playing whoever comes out of the other side of the bracket that lines up with us. We don't know who it will be, but we'll talk a little bit about that side of the bracket here coming up and what I think, kind of a few key points to think about. So let's first go through Houston. And, this is not Alabama's first time playing Houston. Alabama has played Houston twice over the last 4 years. Both of those games were really good games. I was actually at the one in Houston, missed the one in Coleman because I was actually in Dallas at the time. And Both of these games went down to the wire. The game in Coleman, is famously the one where you have the meme of Nate Oates standing there trying to shake Kelvin Sampson's hand. The whole Houston team and bench is freaking out over the refs, thinking that J.D. Davison should have been called for a goaltend. It doesn't happen. Alabama wins by 1 in Coleman Coliseum. And then the game in Houston, my roommate from college, him and his dad are season ticket holders, so I was able to go to that game. I sat with them, and it was an incredible game. Houston actually goes up about 15 in the second half, and then with about 15:30 to go, Alabama goes on a run, ends up coming back to take the lead, and ends up winning the game in the Fertitta Center. It was a huge win. Obviously, that was the 30-win season with Brandon Miller's team. That was, one of the best Alabama teams of all time. And it was just a really, really big win and a key win for Alabama. And both of these games really told us a lot about how you play against Houston, what Houston wants to do, and how you're going to have to, win this game. First and foremost, you cannot get destroyed on the glass. When you look at how Houston plays, right, they are currently 19th in defensive rebounds, and they are 29th in offensive rebounds, right? So they're top 30 in rebounding on both sides. And that is a huge thing for how Houston plays, is that they stifle you on defense, and then they limit you to one shot, right? They also do a great job at turning you over. They're currently 4th in the country at turning teams over. They sit at 3rd in defense, right? This is an elite defensive team. However, what this team is not, and the place where I think Alabama has a chance to be successful, is this team does not play fast, right? So if Alabama has a chance to speed them up at all, right? We know that when Alabama plays these slower paced teams, if Alabama can get the tempo up a little bit, it definitely plays more into Alabama's favor. You saw that. You see that at times. And the other thing that Houston does not do a good job of, and I do expect them to do better against Alabama, but it's not something historically that they've done great, is run teams off the three-point line, right? When I talked about Illinois, I kind of expected Illinois to do a better job running us off the three-point line. And for the most part, they actually did. They gave our shooters that typically are not the best three-point shooters more three-point opportunities. Just so happened that Grant Nelson made them. Modi made one. Aiden made one. But really, if you're asking Nate Oates, he probably doesn't want those three guys to be the ones combining for 16 threes attempted. He would much rather the guys be Aiden Holloway, Latrell Reitzel, Mark Sears, right? You'd much rather them to have more attempts than the other three. And that wasn't the case, right? So Illinois did a decent job running the guys that they didn't want to take the shots off the line, but they didn't do a great job running the teams off the line as I expected. Houston, however, the amount of three-point attempts compared to just overall field goal attempts, for how they've been historically on KenPom, they've always been at the bottom of the country. Currently, they sit at 329 in that stat. So this is a team that does allow you to take roughly 47% of your shots from three, right? This plays right into Alabama's hand with how they want to play. And this also means that it's a situation where Alabama, I think Houston's going to pack it in, right? They're going to make Alabama take some of those shots from deep. If they start hitting them, I expect them to come out and try to get us turned over. But Houston is going to try to get the rebounds, right? That's their game plan, to leave you to one shot and not allow you to get the putbacks. Obviously, that's Alabama's game plan, is to take the longer threes, get the offensive rebound, keep the possession alive. I don't think you're going to be able to do it against Houston. I don't think that Alabama has the elite rebounders that we've had in some years past where you could afford to do that. It's going to take a team rebounding effort. For example, Noah Clowney in this game in Houston was phenomenal on the glass, and he was a huge part of what allowed us to be so successful in that game. Juwan Gary in the game in Coleman also did really well on the glass, did really well, making shots that you don't always see him make, and was big in the game. If you remember, that game in Houston was the one game of the year, I believe, that Brandon Miller did not score double digits. He scored 8 points. They were all from the free throw line. And he did not, in general, have a great game. But that's what Houston does. Houston tries to take away your best option, make the other guys beat you, and then see how well you can rebound as a team, defend as a team, play offense as a team, and not just have one guy come out and beat them. Right? That's what Houston's going to try to do. Where Alabama potentially is going to have some success is all of our guys have a lot of experience. Right? Alabama is one of the most experienced teams in the country, and I think that this is going to be a really big moment for a lot of those guys. I do also think that the freshmen that we have that play, and that play a good bit, namely in this one I expect Darion Reed and I expect LeBaron Philon to play a good bit. I think that Aiden Sherrill definitely could play a good bit, depending upon how Houston is rebounding. I think that Nate may want to try that option because Aiden at moments can be an elite rebounder. But I think that the fact of how our freshmen play, and that they're a little bit more physical and not as much finesse, I think that they will have some success in this game. I don't think that they're going to get them out of their sorts quite as much as sometimes like a J.D. Davison, right? J.D. had an okay game against Houston, but the level of finesse and like a Javon Quinterly, a Brandon Miller even, because it's a little bit more finesse, they did not have as much success against Houston because of, again, how they play defense. They get up into your body. They really try to punish you. I think that Alabama, having played Memphis in the exhibition, is going to help them because they're going to know what a team's like when they really get up into you and really get physical. But Alabama's going to have to do a really good job on the glass, going to have to do a great job taking care of the ball, and going to have to make some tough shots. The benefit that Alabama does have is Auburn has played Houston and beaten them, so there is a level where Alabama has seen another elite team play them and win and seen how obviously they did it. Again, this is not Nate's first time playing Kelvin Sampson, so I also do expect that there's a familiarity there that will help. I think this will be a very, very good game, and I think that it will partially rely on Alabama's ability to at least keep the rebounding close. I'm not saying Alabama needs to win the rebounding battle, but I think they need to keep it close. Because if Alabama gets doubled up on offensive rebounds like they did against Illinois, it's going to be a long day. Houston is not the most efficient offensive team. They actually are doing a great job currently this year from three. Emmanuel Sharp, LJ Cryer, Milos Uzan, Terrence Arsenio. They have, multiple guys shooting over 40% from three on high attempts. They have done a great job shooting the ball. But I think that the part that Alabama just needs to be on the lookout for is that Alabama needs to rebound the ball and not allow Houston to dominate on the offensive glass, right? That's obviously the key to this game. I do think that Alabama is going to have some chances with Cliff in the pick and roll game, like short rolls and stuff. We had some success with Charles Bediako, and he's obviously, if you know anything about Chuck, he was not always the best with his hands. I think that Alabama and Cliff definitely could have a chance in this one to create some mismatches and create some opportunities. But I do think that in this game, the key to the game has to be rebounding. And I'm not saying anything crazy when I say that, but when you play Houston, rebounding has to be the name of the game because of how good they are at it. Kelvin Sampson is a master at teaching how to rebound. He's a master at teaching how to play defense. And if you're loose with the ball, if you're not crashing the glass, if you're not boxing out, Houston will beat you on the glass. They will turn you over, and they will have success just off of the number of attempts and how difficult they're going to make it for you to run your offense. So I think your guards are obviously going to need to play as good as they have. They're going to need to make open shots and rebound the ball, right? This is going to be a very tough game. I do think that Alabama has a chance to win this game. I think that the Illinois game showed Nate a lot of what he needs to see from a rotation standpoint. The rotations and the offense looked so much better in the Illinois game than it had in any of the games prior, including the exhibitions. And so I think that we may have found something as it relates to offense in that Illinois game, especially against a more skilled competition. But that is what I think, right? I do think that Alabama has a chance to win this game. I'm expecting it to be maybe in the 70-something possession range, probably low 70s. So I'm expecting this game to probably be sitting in the, I don't know, 78, 75 range. I think that Alabama can win. I probably would predict that Houston's going to win just because of them having played Auburn and exposed some of their weaknesses. I think that them playing the tough non-conference game already with Auburn, I think they may have exposed a couple of the things that they needed to work on. And I think that Kelvin Sampson's a good enough coach that I think Houston can win this one. I would not be shocked if Alabama wins, but I'm going to set my expectation that Houston wins a close game and Alabama has to look to bounce back against Rutgers. So we'll talk about the Rutgers game. And this is a game where coming prior to, the Rutgers' most recent game, I thought that this could be a really close one. And if Alabama overlooks Rutgers, it still may be. But now, looking at this game, I do think that Alabama has a very good chance of winning this game and potentially winning it, I don't want to say easily, but kind of going away. And it's Rutgers as a team centers around two guys, and that's Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey, the two 5-star recruits that Rutgers got. We knew that was going to be the case, that those were going to be their go-to guys, that those were going to be the guys that you need to focus in on. But on Sunday, yesterday, Rutgers went into Kennesaw State at Antoine Petway's house and lost. And they lost 79-77. And Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey combined for 35 shots. Dylan Harper has 21 points. Ace Bailey has 17 points. And Kennesaw State played team basketball and won the game. They absolutely destroyed them in rebounding. Rutgers goes with just 27 rebounds, just 8 offensive. And Kennesaw gets 46 rebounds, 14 offensive. Right, so they absolutely dominate them on the glass. And that was the name of the game, right? Kennesaw State turned over the ball 22 times. It doesn't matter if you get destroyed on the glass like that, right? And I think that's the reason why I would look for Alabama to win this game and potentially win it going away, is Rutgers got exposed at their inability to rebound the ball. Partially, this could be due to the fact that one of their best rebounders is now playing for Alabama in Cliff Amore. But I don't expect that they would be able to turn us over to get 14 steals like they did in that game against Kennesaw. And if you lose the rebounding battle to Alabama by 19, it's going to get ugly, right? I think that Kennesaw didn't quite have the guys to really break it open, and thus you had the turnovers, and the game was much closer than it should have been. But Kennesaw having that rebounding battle, Kennesaw was in the lead for the majority of the game. Kennesaw was, the better team, right? This was not a fluke game. This was a situation where they out-rebounded them, and they just played a better game. They shot 60% from 2. They played a better game, right? And so I think that when I look at Rutgers and how Alabama potentially would be able to win this game, there's a level of Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper are going to get some points, and you have to know that. And I'm not saying you just let them score, but you just don't let them have 40. Let them get their 18 points and shut down everybody else. make it tough on them. Don't give them easy shots, but really more hone in on everyone else and don't let them, start getting hot and be able to facilitate. And I think you win this game. And honestly, I think you win this game going away. Rutgers has the 99th ranked offense, 71st ranked defense as it relates to KenPom currently. They play fairly fast on offense, which I think potentially plays into Alabama's skill set. In the Kennesaw State game, it got up to 79 possessions. So I think this is even one where Alabama's going to be able to get them up and running. And I think it's going to play right into Alabama's skill set. And I think that Alabama can, like I said, I think Alabama wins this game, and I think they win it going away. My prediction on this one would be Alabama 92, Rutgers 76. And 76 may be too much. I think that Alabama has the ability to shut down a team that really just has two guys. And I don't want to overstate, that by saying they don't have anyone else, because they have some role players. But when you look at Rutgers' schedule, they've only played one team inside the KenPom top 160, and they lost, and that was Kennesaw State. Their next best team that they played was St. Peter's, who they only won by 10 points. And Rutgers has just not been as dominant as you need to be against lower level competition. And Alabama is going to be far and away the best team they've played to this point. We're going to have a set of playmakers where you're not going to be able to shut down one option, right? We just talked about that with Mark Sears scoring 0 points and Alabama still putting up 100. And I think that Rutgers is just not going to have the ability to do a ton outside of Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. And I think that Alabama is going to win the game and win the game comfortably. When you look at two freshmen that you're going to rely on, and really you're relying on them to give you everything, it's just a recipe for disaster. And so I don't think it's going to be enough. I think that Alabama is going to be able to have a lot of success in that game. And like I said, I would expect Alabama to win by 15 to 17 points. And then as it relates to the rest of the Players Era tournament, I will throw up the bracket. But Alabama will play some version of either A&M, Creighton, Oregon, or San Diego State. I do not believe they can play Texas A&M due to the fact of how the MTE tournaments and conference games work. As it relates to Creighton, obviously I would rather not play them due to the fact that we will be playing them in Coleman Coliseum on the 14th. I would look to either play Oregon or San Diego State. Both Oregon and San Diego State are decent teams. Neither one of them are absolutely elite teams, but it's another, high major team that definitely can challenge Alabama in different ways. Oregon currently sits at 5-0 with a win over Oregon State is kind of their marquee win to this point. San Diego State sits at 2-1 with their loss being against Gonzaga at home by 13. So, both of these teams have really good things, have weaknesses. San Diego State, a much better defensive team than offensive team. Oregon, much more of a balanced team currently. Their offense and defense only being separated by about 10 spots. So I think that both teams can definitely challenge Alabama in different ways. I think that the biggest landmine Alabama has to face, obviously, is Houston in that first round. But I do think that if Alabama can beat Houston in round one, our ability to win the MTE is very likely, right? I think it's a very possible thing for Alabama to win the MTE. I will say there's some weirdness as it relates to the seeding and winning by a certain number of points in terms of tiebreakers. So we'll have to see how that ends up coming out, because they seeded it very weirdly where Alabama could technically go 2-0 and so could Notre Dame. Certain teams can go 2-0 and still be. There can be two teams that are 2-0 and two teams that are 0-2 on each side of the bracket. That is going to require them to be a certain number of tiebreakers because it's not a true round robin in terms of the brackets. So it is a little weird how the tournament is set up. However, like I said, I do think that Alabama has a real chance to win this tournament, especially as it relates to our ability to win if we can get past Houston. But that is a huge if because Houston is a great team. So the last thing I'm going to say is we're going to cover what happened on Saturday. And simply put, Alabama got their butt kicked. There's no other way to say it. Oklahoma was the better team, and Oklahoma was better in every facet of the game. Alabama's offensive line looked like it had never blocked before. Jalen Milroe looked like he was scared to death. And the only good play that Alabama had was called back by a penalty that potentially is going to get an entire referee crew fired. Right? This is the same crew that set the precedent in the Georgia-Texas game about throwing things on the field. They should have been reprimanded for that one. They weren't. They played in this game. They had an egregious callback. Does it change the difference in the game? Absolutely not. Alabama was awful, was not going to win the game. But it definitely hurt the momentum, right? I'm not saying Alabama couldn't have made the close game. I still don't think they win, but Alabama could have at least, gotten some momentum from that touchdown and, maybe made something out of the game. Like I said, I still think Oklahoma wins, but that's all I have to say about it. At the end of the day, Alabama got their butt kicked, and they were worried too much about the playoff after seeing Missouri beat Mississippi State and saying, we're into the playoff, all we got to do is win. And they forgot the all we got to do is win part. Because they looked like they were sleepwalking into the playoff. And as I told some friends, if we were playing in Auburn this week, I would bet the house on Auburn. Even in Bryant-Denny, I still think that Alabama cannot sleepwalk through this game. I think that Auburn's players may have just done us some favors earlier today by basically saying, we're going to destroy Alabama and we're not losing to Alabama when I play there and all this other stuff. So that may help us, but in general, I think that the team definitely has some growing up to do. I'm kind of excited that the Jalen Milroe experiment is officially over because I'm sure this is his last season, and I'm excited for something new. So for me, we're on to basketball season. I wore the Tide Hoop shirt for a reason. It's basketball season, and this is all I'm going to say. I probably will do a bit of a preview for the Iron Bowl because it is the Iron Bowl, but I'm ready for basketball season and I'm ready for this Alabama-Houston game. So that's what I have to say about that. Sorry about no preview of the Oklahoma game, but I'm sure it would have been wrong because I definitely wasn't expecting us to just get absolutely dominated. So sorry about that, but you saw what happened and it was a disaster. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Like I said, hopefully I didn't bring the mood down here at the end, but thank you, everyone, for watching. I really appreciate it. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please do so, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.